Hello, I'm doing a book review, and the book I want to review is Locke Key Volume 3, Crown of Shadows. Now, Locke Key is a horror/dark fantasy comic book series written by Joe Hill and illustrated by Gabriel Rodriguez and published by IDW Publishing. Now, this series was published between the years 2008 and I want to say 2016, but I'm not entirely sure on that. But all the issues of this series were collected into 6 volumes. Now, even though the main storyline of this series is kind of over and done with, Joe Hill and Gabriel Rodriguez have done a lot of one-shot issues that are separate from the main narrative, but are still in the Locke Key universe. And apparently, coming this October, Joe Hill and Gabriel Rodriguez are going to be doing a crossover between Locke Key and Neil Gaiman's Sandman series, which I'm really intrigued by because I am a big fan of the Sandman. But I'll talk more about my thoughts and even concerns regarding that after I review this volume. Now, I've already reviewed the first 2 volumes of this series, and I'll leave links in the description below to where you can check out those reviews. And I've also recently finished reading this entire series, or at least the main series. I haven't read any of, the spin-off issues yet. But I'm going to be spacing these Locke Key reviews out throughout the next few months. Now, recently these comics have been adapted into the Netflix series of the same name, which I have seen, and I'll discuss my thoughts on the Locke Key series after I review this volume. But the premise of Locke Key is it's about this family called the Lockes who moved to this small town in Massachusetts called Lovecraft after the father in the family, Rendell Locke, is murdered, and they move to this place called Key House where Rendell grew up, and the Locke children discover that the house is filled with magic keys that can change reality, and there's this demon called Dodge who is trying to get his hands on all the keys, and Dodge is also the one who is manipulating Sam Lesser, who is the man who murdered their father. So, the plot of Volume 3 is it revolves around the Crown of Shadows, which only works with the Shadow Key. Now, anybody who possesses the Crown of Shadows can control these shadow demons to do his or her bidding. So Dodge gets his hands on the Shadow Key and the crown, and now he's controlling all these shadow demons to help him get his hands on what's known as the Omega Key. Now, the Omega Key opens the Black Door. Basically, the Black Door is the gateway to hell. Well, maybe not the traditional Judeo-Christian hell, but whatever dimension Dodge is originally from, this key opens the door to that dimension, and if he's able to open this door, he'll be able to bring more of his kind into our world, and if that happens, it will mean really bad things for our world. Now, that's the basic plotline of Crown of Shadows, but there's a lot more going on in this story than just that. This volume focuses a lot on the character of Kinsey Locke, the teenage daughter, who, in Volume 2, used the head key to literally take out her fear and her sadness. But in this volume, you start to see the consequences of that, where she starts to do things that she wouldn't normally do if she had her fear or sadness. There's a certain point in this volume where her actions almost gets her friends killed. And this volume really focuses on her friendship with these 2 guys named Scott and Jamal, and it hints that there might be a romantic relationship between her and Jamal later on. And she's kind of messing around with both guys, and again, because she no longer has her fear or sadness, she's not really taking into account how this might actually hurt them. But this volume also really focuses on the character of Nina, the mother in the family, especially in the last issue collected in this volume, which is called Beyond Repair. In this issue, you get a real sense of just how deeply traumatized Nina has been from what Sam Lesser did to her family. You also find out in this issue that she was raped by Sam Lesser's partner. But basically in this issue, Nina discovers this key to this cabinet, and basically any broken thing you put in this cabinet gets fixed. That's all I really want to say about this issue, but it is so freaking heartbreaking what happens at the end of this issue. And a lot of this is really about Nina's alcoholism and how her alcoholism is affecting her relationship with her children. Now, this is of course common knowledge, but Joe Hill is Stephen King's son, and Stephen King is very open about how he used to have issues with alcoholism and substance abuse, and I'm not sure if Joe Hill is using Nina as sort of a stand-in for his father, but when he's writing the character of Nina, honestly, it feels like he's writing from personal experience. So, there's a lot of really good character drama in this volume, but also a lot of really good fantasy. Like, one of the keys that they discover is the giant key, and basically this key can literally turn you into a giant. And there's a part where this giant shadow demon is going after Kinsey and Bodhi, and Tyler literally becomes a giant and starts fighting it, and you kind of get this, like, kaiju battle, which I thought was really cool. But yeah, I highly recommend Volume 3. Now, it's hard to recommend this as a standalone, because you really have to read the first 2 volumes in order to understand this one, and this one also leads directly into the next volume, so it's hard to recommend it as a standalone graphic novel, so I should say I recommend this entire series highly. Now, as I pointed out before, even though the main story arc of this series is wrapped up, Joe Hill and Gabriel Rodriguez have been doing a lot of one-shot issues, and apparently this October there's going to be a crossover between Locke Key and the Sandman series, which I'm really curious to see how that turns out. I'm also curious to see how that's gonna work continuity-wise, because Sandman is in the DC universe, and there's no implications whatsoever that Locke Key is part of the DC universe. And my biggest thing with crossovers is, unless you're doing something that's specifically set outside of the continuity of both franchises, does it make sense that these 2 series could be in the same universe? I don't know if Joe Hill's gonna maybe do the whole multiverse thing to explain how the 2 series could be connected, or if it's gonna be just specifically set outside of continuity. All I know about this upcoming crossover is apparently it's gonna have something to do with the key to hell that Lucifer gave Morpheus in the 4th Sandman graphic novel, Season of Mist. Now, as I pointed out, recently Locke Key has been adapted into a Netflix series of the same name. Now, I liked the series for the most part. It did make a lot of changes from the comics, but a lot of the changes, I will say, made sense for the show. The issue I had with it is some of the changes they made for the Netflix show kind of hurt the story, in my opinion. Now, I didn't mind the changes they made to the head key. I actually thought what they did with the head key was really clever. I also didn't mind how they changed the name of the town from Lovecraft to Matheson. Now, in the comics, the name of the town is specifically a reference to H.P. Lovecraft, whereas in the show, the town's name is specifically a reference to Richard Matheson. Now, I'm a huge Richard Matheson fan, so I was cool with that change, but I could see some people having a problem with it. I will say, I didn't particularly care for how they combined Scott and Jamal into one character, especially because I really did like the character of Jamal from the comics. Now, some of the changes between the show and the comics I'm going to address more when I eventually review the other volumes in this series, but a change that really irked me was what they did with Dodge's backstory. Now, eventually in this series, you'll find out where Dodge came from, and it's this whole big story arc, but in the show, Dodge's backstory is reduced to a one-scene flashback. But the way the flashback is done, it doesn't seem like they'll be able to go back and maybe expand upon it in later seasons. Also, a lot of what happened in the season finale of the show happened because at the end of the episode before, a character made a really boneheaded decision. However, while I had mixed opinions on the show, I will say I liked it more than I didn't, and I do hope they do a season 2. I will say the casting, at least for the main characters, was excellent. Like, all 3 actors who played the Locke children absolutely nailed their roles. I also gotta say, I loved the actress playing the female version of Dodge, but the actor playing Dodge in his male form, Lucas, it's not that he was bad, but I felt like he was kind of trying too hard to be creepy, whereas the actress playing Dodge in the female form kind of stole whatever scenes she was in. I also gotta say, I fanboyed a little bit at the Tom Savini cameo. But that was my review on Locke Key Volume 3 by Joe Hill, and bye.